I have the privilege of introducing our next and final Tech Talk presenter. Angie McCloskey is presenting Word Choice Can Exclude or Include, You Decide. Angie is the Community Relations Officer at Mosaic, a nonprofit faith-based agency supporting people with disabilities. Angie believes in servant leadership and serves the foster care community as an educational surrogate parent volunteer for children with special needs. Recently, while attending a training for work about social and workplace behavior, Angie learned something about herself, that she is neither an introvert nor an extrovert. Apparently, her tendency is to sit right in the middle between the two, and the test taught her that she has the ability to lean one way or the other, depending on the circumstances, and that's about 40% of the populations who also share this trait. We're hoping today that she leans a little toward the extrovert side. Let us all welcome Angie McCloskey.
Thank you. Today I want to talk to you about words. Have you ever thought about just how powerful words truly are and what they can do? I mean, stop and think about it just for a minute. Words are like little weapons. They have the ability to destroy. We worry every day about whether North Korea is going to take us out with nukes, but really we are the ones walking around with weapons of mass destruction dangling off our lips and our tongues. Think about that. How many times in your life has somebody said something to you that has completely ruined your day? It only takes one word for you to do a complete 180 shift in your thinking to ruin your day or ruin a moment. I'll give you an example. Happy couple, out on a date, they're in love, everything's all romantic and intimate, and they're having a good time, and suddenly someone whispers the wrong name. Right? One word has ruined that night, possibly the year, depending on the couple. Or how many of you have children and your child comes home from school and they're crying, they're upset because so-and-so called them a something-something? Bullies are fully knowledgeable on how to use words as weapons, and it happens every day. But on the flip side, you could have a really horrible, miserable day, and you come home and your loved one just says the right thing, and it melts that day away. Let me give you another example. I was at the Acme early in the morning, probably about 3 weeks ago, picking up a couple of things before work, and there were three people in front of me. The cashier was doing three things that indicated to me that she was having a really bad day. One, she wasn't making eye contact with anybody. She wasn't verbalizing with anyone, so she wasn't telling anybody how much their orders were. She was making them rely on reading the screen to see how much money they had to give to her. The other thing that she was doing is she was taking the items off the belt and really forcefully throwing them into the bag. So I felt bad for the gentleman who was buying apples that were probably all bruised by the time he got home. So I'm the fourth person in line, I'm observing all this, and I'm thinking, this woman is very rote-like. You know, her body's there, and she's doing the work of the day, but her mind is clearly somewhere else, and it's not a pleasant place. So I'm just watching and observing this. So the first two customers, they go about their transaction in this manner. And the third gentleman, the gentleman in front of me, does something completely remarkable and amazing. Now, if you've ever had a bad cashier experience and you're taking notes because you'd like to know what happens and what these 5 magical words are, you want to write them down. Are you ready? So the gentleman in front of me gets up and he says, you ready for this? He says, "Hello, how are you today?" I'm telling you, this was the magic. He says, "Hello, how are you today?" You'll never guess what happened. She stops, she looks up, and she says, "I'm good, how are you?" Then she smiles, And then she goes back to her work in what was more of an appropriate pace for the job. They continue with pleasantries. That 5-word statement, although if I threw those words up right now and said to you, do you find those words magical or powerful? We probably would just look at those words and say, no, they're everyday words. I use them all the time, not really that powerful. But in that moment, they were incredibly powerful because it reminded that woman to come back to where she was, reminded her that there were people in front of her that needed her attention, and took her away from whatever was putting her in a really angry place. It was amazing. I was in awe watching all this. And then when it was my turn to get up, we had a very pleasant conversation about the unseasonable weather, and we were laughing and having a great time. The gentleman in front of me really changed the course of her day in that moment. So, words are powerful. Whether the words are typed or said, text, emailed, signed, however they're expressed, they have enormous power. And if this is really true, why are we so callous with them? Why aren't we more selective? Why aren't we more careful before we click send, or before we click post, or before we say them? You know, we're walking around with these things that I call weapons of mass destruction that can do harm. Imagine that. Let's use that imagery for a minute. If we use that imagery, would we be more careful with our words? And maybe that imagery is too violent. I apologize for the violent imagery on a Friday afternoon. Let's pick imagery that's maybe a little bit more peaceful. What if we thought of words like a bow and arrow? And the words are like arrows of love breaking down walls, breaking through bigotry and hate and pain, because that's really what words are. They have the ability to build up walls, or they have the ability to break down walls. It's all in how we use them. So I want to talk about that a little bit more. The words that we use have the power to do two things: either include people or exclude people. It's really just that simple. If we look at these two words, there really isn't much difference between them in the spelling, right? They're really similar. But let's look at the origin of the word exclude. It's Latin, ex meaning out, claudere meaning to shut, so it means to shut out. If we look at the opposite of exclude and we look at the word include, include means to admit, to allow, and to accept. The words that we choose have the power to decide where we want to go in a conversation and where we want to be in life. And as educators, it's our job to be on the side of include. And when I say educators, I mean everyone who's in the educational community, whether you're behind the bookstore line, whether you're in the business office taking payments, whether you're providing services out in the community as part of the extensions program, or whether you're in the classroom. We want to be on the include side. Did you know that about 20% of our population, that's about 1 in 5 of us, have a disability? And I think we can all agree that we want all of our services, all of our classrooms to be inclusive, to be on that include side. And that includes all of the language that we're using, all the things we're saying in the classroom, everything on our website, all of our print materials. We want to include all people of all abilities. But the challenge is knowing the subtle differences in how we do that. And I'm not talking about the big stuff that we talked about today. And I'm not talking about the big things like making sure we have ramps for people who use wheelchairs. Or I'm not talking about the big things like having more events and responding to our surveys. I'm talking about the little, subtle differences in the way we present and the way we speak and the words that we choose. My experience in working with people with disabilities over the last couple of years have taught me a few things, and I've established a couple of tips. I'm going to call them rules, since we're in an educational setting. And if you follow these couple of rules, you will be on the include side. Using these couple of rules will help you to make sure that everyone that you're working with, everyone that you're interacting with, will feel empowered and included which will build your retention and your recruitment and the success of the people that you're working with. So what are my rules? You ready? All right, well, it's based on people first language. And if you Google people first language, you'll find this definition or a similar definition. But my definition of people first language is this: remembering that people are people and choosing language to respect people. That's pretty simple, right? So I have 3 rules. Rule number 1, people are people. I know, you're thinking, okay, that doesn't really sound that difficult. It's not. I'm not here to give you anything that's really that hard. Remembering that people are people and putting people first in everything that we say and do. Our disabilities, our roles in life, our job titles, they're just a part of who we are. It's not what we are. And so we always need to remember to put people first. Now, some of you are sitting there going, yep, I do that. I'm a very respectful person. I always put people first. And maybe you do, and thank you for doing that. But as a society, as a whole, we're not doing as good a job as we think we are. How many times do we say the disabled instead of people with disabilities? People with disabilities puts people first and remembers that people are people, rather than saying the disabled. I told you it was subtle. How many times have I seen signs that say this line is for deaf people? That's not putting people first. That's putting deaf before people. People who are deaf puts people first and remembers that people are people. I know it's my dream and it's going to take some time, but I want all the parking signs to be changed to say parking for people with disabilities. Yeah, I know it's more type-faced. I know it's going to cost money. But imagine the impact it makes on people who have to use those services instead of disabled parking. It's my dream, and someday it'll happen. Jane is not confined to a wheelchair. Jane uses a wheelchair. It's subtle. But if we want people to feel like they're part of the institution or the office or the environment that we are all a part of, we need to make these subtle changes. I give a thumbs up to all the colleges that are here today, all the schools and universities in Delaware, because we're doing an excellent job on making sure that we have departments and services for students with disabilities. But I wish those departments were called Services for Students with Disabilities. I wish the coordinators and the advisors in those departments, I wish their job title said Advisor to Student with Disabilities instead of Disability Services Advisor. That puts students and people first. Again, you have to buy new business cards and make new signs and change a few things on the website. I get it. It's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen. So that's rule number 1, remembering that people are people. You know, President Brainerd did a great job on opening up his presentation today, and he did a great job because he said people with disabilities. And I was like, yes, good job. And he said he was outraged, and there's a lot of things to be outraged about, and he's right. Because people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, if you Google their history, many of them spent a lot of time in institutions, and they have spent a lot of time not being part of the conversation and not being included. And we owe them this. We owe them the time it takes to make these changes and allow them to be included. All right, moving on. Rule number 2. Rule number 2 is be mindful of gender generalizations. Oh, how many times do we walk into a classroom and say, okay, guys, open up your books to page 36. We have men, we have women, we have transgender students in our classroom. Do we really need to refer to them as guys? Maybe they'll complain, maybe they won't. They'll probably just open up their books and get right to work, right? But how much more inclusive would our classroom be if we just said, open up your books to page 36. Or referring to you got a woman in your group and you say, oh, she is such a good girl. I love working with her. She's a great gal. Now, I'm not referring to talking about your best friend, that term of endearment that you have with your BFF. I'm talking about our professional educational settings. We need to get away from these overgeneralizations. We're excluding people when we say things like that. And the reason I say be mindful instead of just stop doing it, Because I recognize that we talk this way for the past 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, depending on how old we are. So it's not going to happen overnight. But when we're more mindful and we stop and we think about the way we're saying things, easier it'll be to make it part of our everyday vernacular. And rule number 3, this one's the easiest. People ask me all the time when we're having events at Mosaic, okay, now, can I bring my other kids, the ones that, like, I know they want to say normal, and in the back of my head I'm saying, please don't say normal, but can I bring my normal kids, the ones without disabilities? What do you call people without disabilities? Just that, people without disabilities. We need to stop referring to them as normal people. What is normal? That's a whole other TED Talk. Invite me back for that one. But we either fall into one or two categories. We are either someone without disabilities or we're someone with disabilities. And that's how we should be referring to people. So that's rule number 3. So to really quickly summarize this for you, 3 simple steps. They might be subtle changes in the way we talk and the words that we choose, but really remembering people are people, putting people first in our print materials, in our language, and the way we talk. Staying away from those gender generalizations. And number 3, get away from saying normal. People without disabilities are simply people without disabilities. I gave you a lot of imagery today, and this is one of my favorites. I'm going to leave that up there for a few minutes. I'm going to come back to it. I'm really excited to be here today because this is more than just a talk. This is a social movement. If you make these 3 small changes in the way you speak, choosing the words more carefully, as though they were weapons of mass destruction, or thinking about them as arrows of love, breaking down the walls of hate, bigotry, and pain, imagine the impact it's going to make on your campus, your school, your family, your office, Delaware, the community. This is Randy. He lives in a group home in Omaha. He's supported by Mosaic. He's not a disabled person. He's a person with disabilities. He's not confined to a wheelchair. He uses a wheelchair. He's also a roommate, an employer, a volunteer, a taxpayer, a student, and all these other many things. As you can tell, I like imagery, so I'll let that sit up there for a few more minutes. I think it's really exciting because the educational community is usually the community that takes on social change and social movement the best. So we are at the ground levels of this social movement. If I do it, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it, someone said role modeling today. We role model it. We're mindful, we make these subtle changes, and eventually I won't need to give this talk anymore because it will just be a part of who we are, it'll be a part of our culture. Everyone will feel included, including people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, people with physical disabilities. We will all feel welcomed and included. I know that this can work. I've seen it work. And I'll give you an example as to why. I was not in a good mood the day I went to that Acme. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, as they say. I'd gotten some bad news the night before. I had a really busy day at work planned. I had a lot going on, and I just kind of woke up not in a good place, and I was really grumpy. And I had already decided that it was going to be a bad day. Do you ever have that happen? And that gentleman in front of me, with his carefully selected 5 powerful words, whether he knew it or not, it was like a ripple effect. Like when you throw a stone into a pond. He remembered, maybe he knows it, maybe he doesn't, but he remembered rule number 1, remembering that people are people. He saw that cashier as a human being, not just someone who was going to take his money and then so he could get his food out of the store. He remembered that there was a human being in front of him. And he said hello to her. He didn't tell her it was going to be okay or give her a hug or offer her therapy. He just remembered that people are people. And that ripple effect not only improved her day, but it improved my day as well. I had a lot of meetings planned, I had an event to go to, and I had a lot of interactions with other people that day planned. And my day and the interactions with the people that I had that day could have gone completely differently had I not had that experience. So I know this works. And as someone said earlier today, everything we do not only affects ourselves and the person we're standing in front of, but it affects everyone else, because everything we do has a ripple effect in life. Words are powerful, and you can choose to use them to include people or exclude people. But it's all about our choices. Will you use them as weapons of mass destruction, excluding and alienating people? Or will you make an effort to use these rules so that you too can shoot powerful words of love and inclusion? Thank you.